So there's a couple of themes that I'm pushing this year. One is the theme that everybody's equal at the foot of the cross, no matter what you've done, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you plan to do. Everybody's equal at the foot of the cross. That's a given. And the second one is this whole idea that I'm going to try and turn everybody into a Bible scholar. So I think that we can do that. The Reformed Church has committed itself to that. I'm very committed to it. I want to see that everybody here is, I want to see this congregation as the best biblically informed possible of any congregation in town. And that's the approach that we're taking. We're using a narrative form. We're going through the Gospel of John right now. And I think it's kind of cool to do that. I've seen some results from that already. And I want to make a Bible scholar out of everybody. That means you too, Dick. We're going to make a Bible scholar out of you, all right? So this week, this is the 42nd Easter Sunday that I've done. And somebody came up to me this week and said, "What are you going to preach about?" And I have a stock answer for that. I say, God. And then they wanted me to be a little bit more specific, but I didn't. I said, you show up and then you find out. So, I've been studying God intensely since 1975. I'm really old. And what I did was when I was in college, I took a Bible survey class and found out that most of what I thought about Christianity is garbage. It's not in the Bible. It's made by human institutions. Most of what I was taught about Christianity was not biblical at all. And in dialoguing with the teacher, he says, most leaders of churches don't read the instruction manual. Most of them just simply don't pay attention to the scriptures. And that kind of excited me in a sort of a way, made me very curious. So I went for a double major and got into a New Testament literature major. Then I went to seminary twice, studied things like systematic theology. And there's one thing that I learned about God that I can't ever get out of my mind. One thing that I learned about God is that he is definitely his own boss. That God has what theologians call sovereign freedom. God does what God wants to do, not what I want him to do. He can't be pinned down to anything. We can ask him to do things for us, but he can and does say no. We can demand things from him, but he doesn't always do what we ask. We can't control God. Now, wouldn't it be great if we could? We have this leaky roof above the door there. And the people who are going to repair it say we need a week of dry weather before we could do that. Well, we haven't had a week of dry weather yet this year. And they said, why don't you pray about that? And my response was, I've prayed for the weather before, and God pretty much has that planned, and he doesn't really want me to alter his plans on that. He does what he wants there. But wouldn't it be great if I could control the weather with God, and just say, here, I want it to be between 40 and 80 degrees all the time, and rain only from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. So that just enough so I don't have to run my sprinklers, and everything would be cool. Wouldn't it be great if we could control God if you're single and you're looking for a spouse or a partner, and you have him bring one to you? Or wouldn't it be great if you could control God next time you walk into Wesco and say, I'm going to buy a lottery ticket, I want you to give me the winning ticket so I don't ever have to work again or whatever? But wouldn't it be great if you could control God and have him heal diseases? Boy, if he gave me that ability, you know what I'd do right after this service? After I eat a large quantity of ham and mashed potatoes, I would go to the hospital and heal everybody there. Put Trinity Health out of business. Because That's what I'd like to do. But that's not going to happen. Wouldn't it be great if God was kind of like Amazon, you know? You put in an order in the form of a prayer, and 2 days later, whatever you prayed for arrives on your porch. Not by necessarily a blue truck with a smiley face on it, but by a couple of big angels who just plop it down on your porch. Next day delivery by the angelic hosts. But God cannot be controlled. We probably wish we could control God. I think that's part of the reason that we have crucifixes, you know, that we like to show God pinned to the cross so that we can control him. But our cross is empty. He cannot be pinned down. One of my all-time favorite movies is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, based on the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. And Jesus in that movie is played by, he's called Aslan, and he's played by this lion. And this is a scene from the movie. And look at the compassionate look on the lion's face there. And you see in that movie, well, the kids say several times, but he is not a tame lion. He cannot be pinned down unless he chooses to do so. So we're going to look at that through the narrative today. We're looking at John chapter 20 and a few other verses. This will explain some of what was going on there. Early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. She said, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." You know, it was Sunday morning that she did this because she was Jewish, and you can't move things if you're a Jew on Saturday because that's the Sabbath. So they had to wait until Sunday morning. She waited until the sun came up because, you know, they didn't have flashlights in those days. And she went to the tomb. Seeing that, she ran and found Peter, which is kind of an unusual thing because Peter had just betrayed Jesus. You know, he had denied he even knew him, and yet Peter was still the leader kind of the disciples, even after this denial. And then she found the other disciple, John, the disciple whom Jesus loved. And that's such a curious phrase in the Gospel of John, too. He always refers to himself as the disciple whom Jesus loved. Now, the Greek language has 4 words for love, and when Jesus talks about that, he usually uses the word agape, which is a sacrificial love. But here he uses the word phileo. It's a kind of brotherly, sibling sort of love. We get the word philanthropy from that. It's phileo plus anthropos, which means man. So philanthropy means love of man, and that's where that word comes from. But you can imagine Mary here, despairing. She had watched Jesus receive that beating that probably would have killed him, and then she saw him on the cross, and now his body was missing. Had to be an incredible situation for her. So the narrative goes on like this. Peter and the other disciple started out for the tomb. They were both running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He stooped and looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he didn't go in. Then Simon Peter arrived and went inside. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. Now, if the body was stolen, why'd they unwrap it first? You know, that's just one of the observations that you can make with this passage. And then it says that John ran faster than Peter, which has no significance that I can think of. And then it says that the headcloth was folded up. Now, the dean of students where I went to college said that's proof that you need to make your bed. You can't, because Jesus did, okay? But I'm certain that it was a very unusual sight. It goes on, says this. Then the disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For until then they still hadn't understood the scriptures that said Jesus must rise from the dead. And then they went home. So it dawned on them. So they were looking into this tomb, that Jesus would rise from the dead. It dawned on them that Jesus could not be pinned down. He was pinned to a cross and died. He let the world do that to him, but it was temporary. He could not stay pinned down. Now, Mary was standing outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she stooped and looked in. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. Well, she probably didn't know that they were angels. I can't prove this, but I think we all encounter angels all the time. We just don't realize it. But I think they're all around us, and they're busy helping us out. In this case, the angel knew why she was crying, but he asked her anyway. He wanted to make her think about what was going on. And her response was, "Because they've taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they've put him." That was her answer. She had to be both heartbroken and disgusted. Heartbroken that he was dead, disgusted by the way he had to die, and now they stole his body. So she turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" Why didn't she recognize him? It's probably because she was weeping, because she was full of tears. And none of us can see things clearly when we're grieving. It's just a fact of life. She thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you have taken him away, tell me where you put him and I'll go and get him." "Mary," Jesus said. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which is Hebrew for teacher. So there's the point of recognition. Try to imagine what's going through her mind at this time. She watched his beating, she watched his crucifixion, and now he's standing in front of her alive. And there's a curious statement here. He says, "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, "for I haven't yet ascended to the Father, but go find my brothers and tell them I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene found the disciples and told them, "I've seen the Lord." Then she gave him his message. Now that phrase, "don't cling to me," sounds really out of place. Now, what in the world is that doing there? And I've tried to figure that out over the years, and I only come up with one answer that's remotely satisfying. And that is that quite often when they did quotes, they used capital letters. And in the Greek, if your handwriting was a little messy, they didn't have Microsoft in those days. If your handwriting was a little messy, the letters could easily be misconstrued. But if you look at the phrase, "don't cling to me," and you put it next to the phrase, "don't be afraid," they look very similar in capital Greek letters. And in the other Gospels, it does say, "don't be afraid." And that's the best explanation I can come up with for that. It says that he's ascending, his body is healing, and he's doing that to show us that we're going to have a new heavenly body one day. He's getting ready to go and prepare a place for us, and then he'll come back and get us when it's ready. He let himself be pinned down to a cross, offering himself as a ransom for us. But he did not stay pinned down, and he is not pinned down today. And if you follow Jesus, you are not pinned down either. This world tries its best to pin you down with expectations. Your children, if you have adult children, they have expectations of you that you can't live up to. If you have parents, they have expectations of you that you probably can't live up to. Your so-called friends have expectations of you, maybe even your spouse. Don't you get tired of trying to live up to other people's expectations? Don't you get tired of having to live up to other people's standards? Paul interprets how Jesus set us free from this. He set us free from living by the standards imposed on us by others. We'll take a quick look at his interpretation of this whole crucifixion event from Galatians chapter 2. He says, we Jews, and he was writing to a Jewish audience, we Jews know that we have no advantage of birth over non-Jewish sinners. We know very well that we are not set right with God by rule keeping, but only through personal faith in Jesus Christ. How do we know? We tried it. And we had the best system of rules the world has ever seen. The Jews of Jesus' day had 613 rules, which were impossible to remember, let alone keep. And here he says that the reason Jesus did what he did is so that by trusting Jesus to save you, that is the only way to be right with God, is to have this personal faith in Jesus Christ. He goes on, he says, convinced that no human being can please God by self-improvement, we believed in Jesus as the Messiah so that we might be set right with God, right before God by trusting in the Messiah, not by trying to be good. Isn't that cool? Trusting in the Messiah is how you get right with God. You know, you get in the chair, trust, just as you trust the chair to hold you up, you trust Jesus to save you. That's how you get right with God. Not by following a bunch of rules. Not by living up to other people's standards. That's how you get it. Now, Paul goes on with this, and in his typical emphatic way of saying things, what actually took place is this. I tried keeping rules and working my head off to please God, and it didn't work. So I quit being a lawman so that I could be God's man. Christ's life showed me how and enabled me to do it. I identified myself completely with him. Indeed, I have been crucified with Christ. My ego is no longer central. It is no longer important that I appear righteous before you or have your good opinion. And I am no longer driven to impress God. Now think about that. Crucified with Christ. And what that's done. Your ego is no longer central. I really like the way this thing translates that. Your ego is no longer central. Your ego has been put on the back burner. You can't get rid of it, but it's put on the back burner. What that means is you don't have to be right all the time. Your ego is on the back burner. You don't have to live up to somebody else's expectations, and you don't have to be right all the time, because you can't be right and happy at the same time. You don't have to win arguments. The opinion of others is not important. You don't have to be pinned down by the opinion of others. And you don't have to impress God, because you trust Jesus to save you. Now, Paul goes on, I missed a slide. He says this, Christ lives in me. The life you see me living is not mine, but is lived by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. I am not going to go back on that. He says to live by faith. It's much simpler and much happier. Jesus gave us one major commandment. Treat others the way you want to be treated. That's what the Bible's all about. See, when you trust Jesus to save you and live this way, the rest won't be as important. You're not going to be pinned down by this any longer. So today I'm going to invite you to renew your faith through the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. It reminds us of what Jesus did for us. So let's remember how he was willingly pinned down for us, but he did not stay pinned down. He rose. And now he releases us from those things which pin us down. Think of these things as you receive the Lord's Supper. Now, when Jesus put this together, he did it so that we would remember the sacrifice he made on the cross. He was pinned down for us. And the night before that happened, he took the bread as he was sharing a meal with his students. He took the bread and he broke it. He said, "This is my body which is broken for you. As often as you do this, do so in remembrance of me." And then after the meal, he took the cup. It was a ceremonial thing with a Seder meal. And he blessed it. And he says, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. As often as you drink of this, do so in remembrance of me." Let's pray together, shall we? Lord, today it is with gratitude we realize that you allowed yourself to be pinned down for us so that we no longer need to be pinned down by sin or by death. As you've done this all for it. You've done this all for us. So we invite you to speak to us anew through this sacrament and enable it to be a blessing to our faith, a stepping stone of growing closer to you. Amen. As always, thanks again for joining us. We have 2 services on Sunday morning, and if you're in town, we'd invite you to come. One's at 9 o'clock and one's at 11 o'clock. And if you wish to support Laketon Bethel, you can go to laketonbethel.org and follow the steps there on our website. Or you can just look at this QR code, scan it in with your phone, and you can give through Secure Give, and all your gifts will go directly into our account. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.